Welcome to the Front Seat Life podcast. This is Jessica Butts, your host and CEO and creator of Front Seat Life, where I help you be unapologetically who you are in your life, love, and business. Hi, welcome, Lisa.
Hello, Jess.
Hi. Okay, so everybody listening, we are sitting on my couch in my home in Kenmore, Washington. It's 8 a.m. I have my sweats on still. I have my hair up in a bun. Lisa's ready to go do business, but we had a slumber party last night. Lisa is a dear, dear, dear friend of mine. This is one of the most incestuous relationships I've ever had. Lisa started as a client. In full transparency, I don't like to pretend that that's not where we started, but you were special from the get-go. You have turned into a dear friend. So she was a client. I've actually worked with her and her husband, which we're going to talk about today. So we've had that conversation that this is fully out there, and she's given me permission, and she will share what she feels like sharing about her marriage and her relationship, about being unapologetically who she is, learning how to love me for who I am, and then how to step into speaking her partner's language, which her husband is a fantastic friend of mine as well. And this just gorgeous person inside and out, Mike Fischer. So we are the morning after. We drank lots of wine last night. We sat and talked. We did all the girl talking. I almost thought about recording this last night with wine, but we're doing it with tea this morning instead. So welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, this is so fun.
Yeah, it is. We were just saying too, it feels totally different than doing like a Facebook Live, because I'm sitting here like Indian style on my couch. We're hanging out and we both have lav mics on. We're just facing each other, and it feels comfortable and easy.
Box of Kleenex.
Yes, just in case. I already started crying this morning. So over coffee, we started talking about what we wanted to discuss, and I started crying, and I thought, oh, for crying out loud, I better get some tissues. So Lisa, let's jump in. For those of you who listening, obviously, I have been on a journey the last probably 4 episodes or so of transitioning from the be unapologetically who you are in your life into the love segment. So I am crazy passionate about helping people get back into their front seat. So if you don't even know what that means yet, you need to go back and listen to probably episode 0, 1, and 2 about what it means to get into your front seat. So that's about being unapologetically who we are, figuring out our authenticity, figuring out our personality type, our core values, what's important to us, how God put us on this earth. Lisa and I are both Christians, so we might drop the God bomb a few times. But getting into our front seat, hence the name of my company, Front Seat Life, is really all about showing up and being unapologetically who we are, regardless of what other people think. So let me start by saying that's not about being a jerk. It's not about being a bad person. It's about being the best human being you can possibly be, but doing what God puts you on this planet to do. And when we show up in that way, sometimes people accept it and sometimes they don't. And why I wanted to talk to Lisa about this is because her and Mike have gone on a journey over the last many years that have gotten them closer. I kind of ruined the punchline a little bit, but have gotten them much, much, much closer, really changed their marriage. And I went on a different path. And so I think Lisa and I share an interesting example of this, of where her showing up and being unapologetically who she is in her relationship with Mike has brought them closer. And for me, the opposite happened. There's a lot of reasons. Oh, she's already crying. Okay. Wow. Already tears are already flowing. Okay.
Wow.
Here we go. And for me, the opposite happened. So when I showed up and started to learn who the hell I was in my own life and started to be unapologetically who I was in my marriage, it ended. So there's a lot of reasons it ended, but quite honestly, that was the main reason. I mean, there was affairs and addictions, and I probably could have gotten over all of that stuff. In fact, I did get over all of that stuff. But when it came to me really showing up and being who I was, that's when everything shifted. So Lisa, your tissue's coming out. I hope you guys just heard that. The tissue coming out of the box. We're 5 minutes in and we've already got tears. This is going to be a doozy. Okay, girl. So I've given some background on what we're going to talk about. can you share with us, let's like go back to the beginning. So you and Mike have been married for 32 years
32.
now? Is that
known each other for 35.
Yeah. And if you saw her right now, like go look her up on lisafischerstyling.com. Is that your website? lisafischerstyling.com. You'd think she's 35. So there's always this moment of like, how the frick have you been married for 35 years? Got 3 beautiful, amazing, ridiculously fabulous kids. But take us back to some significant parts of that journey of your 30 years together. You actually told me one last night, but you can share whichever one you want about moments where you were suppressed or shut down or didn't step into being unapologetically who you are.
Sure. Well, I mean, gosh, let's get real. So if you do the math, I mean, we've been married 32, known each other for 35 years. So we met in college and I was married at 20. I mean,
wow.
Just that.
Yeah.
What do you know in terms of seriously who you are? You might know where you're going or the direction or the vision, right? And we're on a journey and a path, but really, do you bring your best self, at 20? You're still learning who you are.
Yeah. Sorry, 20-year-olds, but I totally agree with Lisa. I actually have this funny thing that I don't think you should be able to get married until you're 30.
Well, my kids are, my youngest is 20. He'll be 21 in a few months. And we talk about this all the time is, being open, not judging, right? Not judging yourself, but just learning and exploring. So from that place of meeting in college, figuring out who we were, I was attracted to Mike because actually he was the opposite of who I was at that time. And I thought that was so fascinating. And it was the opposite of who I was is what I fell in love with.
Yeah. But even back then, so you're saying there was even a part of you who, and I would agree in my marriage, and sorry, anybody in their 20s, but I just don't think we know who we are yet. We don't know kind of our best selves. We haven't had our edges. We haven't had the difficult life experiences. And again, I'm generalizing, but so you guys get together, you get married, you start this life together. So this is interesting. So there's 2 things that could have happened. You could have either shut down and started like minimizing yourself or you didn't even know who you were. So I'm thinking about the listeners right now. And I think you probably fall into 2 categories, right? You either have, in your case, you have kids, you get married, you start this life, you're making the lunches, you're doing the dinners, you're busy and you don't take the time to necessarily figure out who you are. Or in some cases, I think more my case is I started to figure out who I was. And then I realized the life that I had developed for myself wasn't congruent with who I was. So which one was it for you, or was it a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. I mean, so the thing that I think was a driving force between Mike and I is that we were both very driven people.
Yeah.
And so, here we are, 2 individuals building a business, doing our thing, doing the corporate world. I was in human resources. Mike was in sales for a technology company, and we were just driven. We didn't take any vacations really to speak of. And that was like this common thing between us. We both knew how to work super hard, but we didn't really know or take time to play hard. We were one-sided. We waited for 8 years to even, start to raise a family.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And then when we started our family, I'm an only child. Mike has 2 siblings. But then I realized, wow, do I really even know how to do this thing? And then my friends were starting to have children. And then I became a home mom. And then I shifted. And then I put that same energy, that dedication, that drive into being a really good mom, into setting that temperature in the home of building a family.
Yep.
At
what point then do you feel like you may have lost yourself? Did you not? So I know you now to know that you have dreams. You are a dreamer. You are an ENFP down to the core, sister. You are extroverted, big picture, heart-centered, and spontaneous, go with the flow. And so there is a part of you, I know now, that that day-to-day routine must have been killing you a little bit. Yes, there's this empowerment to be the best mom ever, and I have visions of you being that person. However, there had to be a part of you that was like slowly dying. And where's the more? Where's the romance? Where's the vacations? Where's the oomph that us intuitives need so desperately? At what point did you realize that?
Well, I look at that 8-year period of time before children and being so driven and, taking vacations that were around work and things like that. I think I started losing myself within that period of time, honestly, in terms of that fun-loving, spontaneous, sporadic person, because I thought that it was about, okay, we're homeowners now and let's be realistic. And again, that is Mike's front seat, is this planning, is the numbers, is the being super responsible, and where in there is that spontaneity and the ability just to go, I see the numbers, but I want to do this anyways. Is I sort of went into this, let's just submit to the plan. And I really stopped, I think, or it slowly started to fade a little bit of this spontaneous person. So when we had children, that became the area in which my creative juices, decorate the bedroom. Let's do the wall hangings. And that creativity came through there. Yeah. But then you're right. Then you have the schedule, the sleep schedule, the feeding schedule, all of that. And then you have your body changes. And so then, you're getting a schedule in regards to your workout schedule. But, after a while, I think once the kids got into school, and you're right, the lunch schedule, the homework schedule is I began to actually really enjoy that. But then when you get to the point where there's the pressures around the finances and doing things within that bubble, then I felt, because I wasn't contributing financially, I was a full-time home mom. That became challenging. Yeah. And then there was a period of time in the tech world where Mike lost his job, and it became super stressful. And that financial stress, we didn't have anyone in our life at that time to really guide us. We weren't working with a financial planner, investing, all of that whole piece. And it became like living 5 minutes in front of your face because we were surviving. Yeah. But it was challenging. Yeah. And it was really challenging because Mike began to spiral, because his whole masculinity, manhood, that whole piece, and which I couldn't really relate to, but was on the line. Like, I'm taking care of my family. I have 3 babies. I have a wife. What do I do? And it was pressure that we had never experienced in our life before. It took a couple years to get through that, to get, re-employed back on a track. But that was really difficult for both of us. Yeah.
So at what point during this 30 years did you start to shut down? So last week's episode was really about this masculine, feminine energy and how some of us, me included, show up in a protection mode. So really, this feminine energy is about opening up, receiving, being unapologetically who we are, expressing ourselves, all of that. And the masculine a bit is somewhat of, it's not necessarily true about protection, but this masculine energy or this shutdown. So in your case, in your marriage, at some point you shut down and you just kind of, in a way, settled. And mine became more of a controlling and a masculine, and how we show up to protect ourselves, because we don't want to fight. We want to go along to get along. There's this whole thing of like, well, what am I going to do now? I mean, especially as kind of a stay-at-home mom. And for me, I was very financially dependent in a way on Brian, on my husband. And so we all, I think, when we start questioning our relationship and when we start like not being unapologetically who we are and questioning ourselves, we go through this sense of either shutting down or getting into this bossiness or putting up a guard around our heart. So do you remember when that started to happen for you?
What's coming to mind right now is when Mike was laid off from his job.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. That's my first recollection is, so he's laid off from his tech job, and we went from, just a lifestyle that we were used to, kids in private school, right, to considering pulling our kids out of private school, moving and selling our house, moving into an apartment.
Wow.
Sold our car, and we were borrowing a friend's farm truck. I mean, it was massive. And almost really going into almost like a depression.
Mm-hmm.
And, you would think maybe at that time where you could come together and be each other's cheerleader, right? And we were to a point, but then when I would begin to express concern or to express frustration, Mike was not in a place to take that in logically.
Mm-hmm.
It was everything filtered in through this, am I good enough? And it started this weird thing between us where I couldn't be real and share what was on my heart, or the times that I tried and how it was taken and received only made him feel worse. And I didn't want to make him feel worse.
Yes.
So I just really stopped communicating my deepest needs. And so I would go to girlfriends and start to talk. And girlfriends are awesome, but they couldn't help like my mate, right?
Yeah.
And we just, I think that really began the part where I just began to be protective of Mike and
yourself.
And myself, but stopped communicating.
Okay, so we haven't talked about this yet, and I'm going to push you a little bit because I'm actually really curious, because I'm guessing every single person listening right now, I feel like there's people even pulling over in their cars right now because they know this feeling. I know this feeling. I think every single marriage in America, for sure, possibly the world, knows this feeling. At one point, we all stop kind of getting real. Because we're a little bit walking on eggshells, we're nervous, we're scared, we're protecting our own hearts, we're protecting our person, and something happens and we stop really being who we are. We stop having our voice. In hindsight, now where you are now, can you tell us what you would have done different then, if anything?
Then?
Yes.
Well, wow.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm dropping this bomb on you, but
so much has happened. That was in 2008. So 2019. During that time frame. Hindsight. Wow. For sure. What helped us, obviously, so many things, but one of the things that we didn't know about each other was, number one, our love languages.
Yep.
And number two, our personality type.
Yeah.
Our type. And,
where you go in your back seat, what your baby in the back seat looks like, how you react under stress.
That whole thing. And Mike's back seat, he completely shut down and he was self-critical. I shut down and I went inward. I no longer expressed myself, no emotion.
Can I pause you for 1 second?
Yeah.
So everybody listening, what she's describing, they're both extroverts. And so what happens is they go into their baby in the backseat mode. So extroverts flee and introverts yell and get mad. So if you knew then what you know now, you would have had that language. That's exactly why we're doing this podcast right now, is to be able to go, okay, babe, I know what's going on with you right now. You're retreating. You're going away. This is what all extroverts do. So understanding that shutdown, the retreating, the not communicating, the not opening up, and being able to have that language and framework to sit down with somebody and say, baby, I know what's happening because it's happening to me too. Or even if you're opposite types, like knowing that introverts might get in your face and might yell and scream. And I can see the tears in your eyes because it's probably triggering that time of like, we're so, and I've been there too. In my marriage and since then, of having those moments with people and going, I know where you're at right now. I can see it, or sensing it in myself, and like having the language again to be able to communicate this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to talk to let the listeners know, like, that's what's going on. So take us back there. You're in those moments. So being able to understand your type and your love languages would have helped. What else?
Yeah, you're right. Because knowing what the back seat looked like when you pull back, right? And you're just unavailable to fully communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to watch you right now because you're in your head, you're replaying it, you have tears in your eyes, and you're looking off in the distance. And I can see that you're back in that place, right? You're like triggered right now.
I'm folding socks on the floor right now.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Because, Mike I remember, that we'd be sitting on the floor. There's this time I'm sitting on the floor folding socks, literally. They've just gotten out of the dryer. Kids are all at school. And Mike comes down the hallway, sits down with me, helps me fold socks. And we just start bawling.
Yes, please.
And it's like, what are we going to do?
Yes.
And we felt like, Mike felt like a total failure.
Yep.
And he's just like, Lisa, I am so sorry. I did not mean for life to be like this.
But that's a moment of connection. In that moment, something else could have happened. He could have walked away and you guys you could have not had that moment. You could have sat on that floor. Everybody listening knows this moment. You're sitting on that floor, and especially as extroverted feelers, all we want to do is go, baby, I love you. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like Mike coming and sitting with you and going, this is what we want to hear. I'm so sorry. I fucked up. I'm a failure. This thing, I feel bad. What are we going to do? Like, that's actual real life. That's connection. That's sharing your heart. So John Gottman would call that turning towards each other versus what's turning away is I'm going to shut down. I see my wife sitting there in pain, folding socks. I can walk away and avoid this situation. And again, Gottman would call that turning away. I believe that divorce is caused by moments of turning away. Because in that moment, Mike made a choice, whether God made him walk into that room or choose to sit down with you. But that was a defining moment. My guess is for you guys, for him to come sit down with you and share his heart of what's actually going on. That is turning towards. It's not pretty. It's being unapologetically who he is. It was him showing up and saying, I need you to love me for who I am. And guess what? Right now, it's not good. I'm a disaster. I'm insecure. I'm worried. I'm sad. I'm fearful. But he shared his heart with you. So I can tell you're kind of in that moment. Was that a defining moment for you guys? How did that make you feel in that moment 11 years ago to have your husband come sit down and like share his heart with you?
Yeah, it was awesome to witness that and for both of us to go, I don't know what's going to happen, but I guess if we're going to live in a tent,
at least we're talking about it.
Yeah, at least we're talking about it. We're upfront emotions, and then to watch miraculous things happen that year. People showing up with care. People showing up, saying, "Hey, here's $2,500 to pay your mortgage this next month," or whatever, and just saying, "Don't even worry about it." I mean, God was just so in control, but we were so at the bottom of the barrel, and we've been there many times in our marriage. That bottom, the place of bottom. And, God has shown up, we've shown up, but at the same time, it was a choice to work really hard.
Yeah.
To work really hard and just get really clear on, okay, well, what are we going to do? And I think the biggest thing Mike just wanted to know is this too much? Will we be still together? He just needed to have that reassurance of, are you still in? Yeah. Or is this just too much?
Yeah. And this is probably a whole nother podcast episode, but each one of us has an underlying fear. Whether it's abandonment or I'm not good enough. Gay Hendricks wrote this amazing book called The Big Leap, and he talks about these 4 fundamental fears that we all have about outshining or somebody leaving us or I'm not good enough, and I'm kind of forgetting the 4th one, but we all have these fears. And so when we go into our back seat, like Mike did, and you do, and I do, and we all do, is what is that protecting? And so this is, again, about not only putting our own oxygen mask on first and understanding who we are in a relationship. Like, I am so aware, and so are you now, and so is Mike now, and all of your kids, which is so awesome because it's been this trickle-down effect of knowing that this is what my backseat looks like. It's not pretty. Mm-hmm. It's like a baby. It's like a baby showing up and running my life. And I can choose in that moment to kind of stay in that place or step into my front seat, which is, again, being honest and open and saying, I'm fearful you're going to leave me. Mm-hmm. I'm fearful I'm not good enough. I'm fearful that our marriage is going to end. Like, that is so authentic. It's so showing up and, again, being unapologetically who you are. And I've never heard this story about the folding of the socks. So thank you for sharing that, because I think it's not only an example, and we haven't even gotten to you kind of showing up and being unapologetically who you are, and we'll go there next, but that's an example of Mike showing up in his front seat, even though it's a mess, and just saying, here's my extroverted feelingness. Like, I'm scared. I'm afraid you're going to leave me. Okay, so I'm going to go here real fast. This is, I think, the $1 million question for everybody. And it's already making me choke up because, again, full transparency, I'm in a fairly new relationship, and we just discussed this a little bit in the kitchen. I believe it's more painful, and I'm curious your opinion on this. I believe it is more painful to suppress who we are than it is to show up and be unapologetically who we are and have someone say, I don't love you for that. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Totally.
And so there's some probably people listening right now who may not agree, or maybe just got divorced or something, but I have gone through this. You have gone through this. I mean, you tested it with Mike, and I want to hear that next. But, I'm in a position right now where this is happening. I've been in multiple long-term monogamous relationships since my divorce. I was married for 20 years. And I know for a fact that it is more painful for me to suppress who I am than to show up and say, this is who I am. Can you accept this or not? And I've had people leave. This is kind of how it happened with Brian. Like, oh my God, I'm actually figuring out who I am because I got together with him when I was 22. And so when I started to turn 40 and graduate school and all of the life changes, I really started saying, guess what? I'm actually way more powerful than I thought I was. I've got all this stuff in me. I had no idea that this is who I was as a human being. And instead of suppressing it and not living the life that God designed me to do, because that's how you want me to be, I'm actually going to show up, be who I am. And Brian couldn't deal with it. Probably because he just hadn't done his own work or whatever. There was a lot of issues in our relationship, but you stepped in and said the same thing and had different results. But the relationship I'm in right now too is, we just talked about this. Like, here's the bottom line. I think everybody knows this. I'm not a very go with the flow kind of person. Mm-hmm. It's just not who I am. Part of my masculine energy, part of why I'm very successful in business is I kind of know where I'm going. I want to know what the plan is. I want to know what's happening. I want to know those kinds of things. I'm also very visionary, and I know what I want and what I deserve and blah, blah, blah. And so there becomes this delicate balance, this dance, if you will, going back to that infinity symbol. If everybody wants to visualize that infinity symbol that I've talked about in the past, one side is differentiation. Lisa, this is who you are. Mike, this is how I'm showing up in the world now. This is how I come into my relationships. This is who I am. This is what I got going on. I'm going to be the best version of myself. Again, this isn't about being a jerk and saying, take it or leave it kind of a thing. Obviously, everything's a compromise, hence why it's an infinity symbol. And on the other side is the attunement. What does our partner need? How do I learn how to speak his language? But this is, guys, maybe someday I'll figure this out and I'll be a gazillionaire and I can retire. But in the meantime, I don't have the answer, right? I don't have the $1 million answer in between who I am as a person and can you accept me for who I am. In my experience, that has unfortunately mostly ended in ending relationships. So my marriage, a couple of the long-term relationships that I've been in is me showing up and saying, this is what I need. This is who I am. This is what I got going on. And either like, I don't want to be in this anymore or they don't want to be in this anymore. All right, everybody, I have an exciting announcement to make. Front Seat Life has been working very, very hard, basically for the last 7 years, really, on the trilogy of being unapologetically who you are in your life, love, and business. So my first book and my main work is really about being unapologetically who you are in your life, putting your own oxygen mask on first, learning how to show up and be unapologetically who you are. And that book is about live your life from the front seat. The second book and the second piece of work is be unapologetically who you are in your business. So learning, don't do stuff that you suck at, and how to hire out and how to really focus on your kind of superpowers, if you will, around your business. And all of this is about personality type. And the last of the trilogy is about love, which is very, I think, ironic actually, as I'm coming back to my therapy roots as a couples counselor. And I am launching my first ever webinar and online course for couples and relationships. So to learn more, go to frontseatlove.com and you will be directed to a free webinar that I'm going to be hosting for the entire month of April. And then our course starts on the 29th of April. And I would just be thrilled and honored and excited to help you be able to communicate better, to have the loving and connection and authenticity and be able to show up fully who you are in your relationship, to ask your partner to love you for who you are and you to love them for who you are. So again, that love and acceptance can just grow and flourish in your relationship. So come join me over on frontseatlove.com. So I would love for you to share your experience, because luckily it's the opposite of mine, of when you started showing up with Mike and saying, dude, I realize 27 years into this, 25 years into this. I mean, what was the marker for you? How many years in were you? 25?
25.
25 years in, and mine was 20, which is interesting. Showing up and saying, wow, I've fully become myself. I have fully become myself, Mike. Our babies are grown. They're out in this world. I'm an amazing stylist. I have all this entrepreneurial energy in me. Tell me what that was like.
Well, let's take it back 3 years ago. So that would be 29 years in, let's say. Oh, wow. So working with you and talking about type.
Yep.
And learning the front seat and the back seat. Yep. Really understanding how I had shut down for many years. And it was really unfair. It was unfair to myself. It was unfair to my kids. And it was way unfair to Mike that he really didn't know who I was, because I really didn't know who I was. And the first time I met you and I was in your first class of your first program, your first year, I believe, or maybe second year, you had us do 90-day goal sheets. And I'll never forget the very first thing on the first 90-day goal sheet I've ever done in my life was decide if we're going to divorce or not. Decide if we're going to stay together, because we had gotten to a point where I just felt we were so opposite. And things like this. Things like, I realized that Mike didn't know my favorite flower. Okay, that might seem so little in this example, but I was starting to come to this realization of, do you even know who I am anymore? Do you realize the person that I've become? I'm no longer home raising kids. I'm back out in the business world. Do you know how to date me? Do you know what makes me come alive? Right? We kind of got back into that driver mentality where we were just go again, and we weren't taking time for each other.
But I think you just said something really powerful that I want to say again and highlight is that you weren't sharing it with him.
I wasn't.
And it's funny, 29 years in, sometimes you don't even realize it, right? You start to shut down. We all do this. We assume that our partner, especially of 29 years, knows what we're thinking, knows what's going on in our heart, knows our ambitions, knows our dreams, knows our desires. Yet Mike didn't even know. And now knowing, he desperately wanted to know, but you were going through this whole world of like, he doesn't get me, he doesn't love me, he thinks I'm weird, whatever. So there's that powerful realization of that you weren't sharing it with him.
I wasn't. I was in my own, somewhere along the way. And I think it started back in 2008, but I just started kind of talking to myself. Instead of sharing and talking with Mike, I was just going inward. Yes. I probably lived for a good 10 years from 2008 to 2000. I don't know, when got in your program 3 years ago, I think I was probably living out of my backseat. Yep. If you want to really know the truth. Yep. And I was genuine, I was authentic, but I was constantly in doubt
and in your
just
head.
In my head,
which is your backseat.
Living out of my heart and my intuition and my passion.
Totally.
100%. And so what you challenged me to do was to go on a journey to, first of all, figure yourself out, Lisa. Yeah. Let's go on a journey to figure yourself out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I so need to. Yep. And to step in and to be vulnerable of how do you really live in your front seat being me? You know, the extroverted intuitive. That means as I'm feeling something to go with it and to express it and to be. Right? Instead of doing all the time, to be. And that means having honest conversations, to sharing, you know, this is on my heart, you know, but then understanding how to preface having a deep conversation, right? How to even talk to your partner, how to talk to my friends, how to talk to my kids.
And we can't do that until it's exactly what you're saying, until we figure out who we are. And I think this is what so many people struggle with in their life, in their relationships, is they want so desperately for their partner to figure it out, yet they don't even know themselves. I mean, you are such a perfect example of this, someone who was married 29 years, and you would think that they know that, but how can they if you don't even know yourself?
For sure.
So you're right. This is step one. I mean, this is the step one of my process. Everything I do with people is, who are you? Yeah. And then figuring out about how do I show up and be unapologetically who I am so that I can start communicating that with Mike. Because I think about then all the conversations that I've heard since then that you and Mike have had about saying, hey, bro, this is who I am. This is what I got going on. And sometimes they will judge it and sometimes they will accept it. So keep going. This is a great conversation.
No, so, and it's funny today, we talk about it all the time, is my very ENFP self is what Mike fell in love with. And it's who he's so grateful for that I am today, that I'm back to that Lisa that he met, or that I was when he met.
And you thought he's been hating it.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Okay, so listeners, she has been thinking for 25 years, maybe 20 of these years, that he didn't like that. Or that you didn't even like it. You were like trying to change who you were. And this whole time your husband is like, where's my ENFP wife? Where's this woman that I fell in love with? So the more that you have shown up who you are, the more you have expressed yourself, the more you have said, I don't get this. I feel stupid. This is my crazy ideas. This is what I want to do with the family. He's like, baby, I love you. I love you. I love this. Do it more. Do more. Do more. Do more. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And I think it was this whole process of stepping into who I am in terms of even my, starting a business.
Yeah.
And being confident that I can go out in the world and make a difference.
Yep.
And stepping into that belief was honing in the whole thing around who I am. And who I am is I do live from a place of feminine energy. I'm soft. I'm a kind person. And you know what? I speak from a place of love. And I thought I needed to be a thinker and a driver, and I needed to be about numbers and be responsible. And really out of my heart is I see potential. I see possibility. I see people as they can be. And there's a part of me that stopped doing that for years. And I am back. I am back to myself.
Yes, please.
I live out of that place. Started my business 3 years ago. And as I started my business, I think that's really what helped me be, learn about myself and being that 100%.
And I think the power of what you're saying, this is all amazing, but that you were making up a story that wasn't even true. So some people do it for a minute, some people do it for 10 years, some people do it for 20 years. Making up a story that being you was wrong. That being unapologetically the ENFP, the fabulous Lisa Fischer that you are, that was wrong or inappropriate, or that your husband wouldn't like it, or you couldn't be a successful business owner. And the day you started showing up, being ENFP, being your knowing what you suck at, stop doing stuff that you suck at, stepping into it, giving voice to it, doing it with me, doing it with your clients, being that person with Mike, everything has shifted for you. Is that not true?
100%. See, I lived in this place of this story that I was stupid.
Yes.
That I was stupid. And that story started back in 7th grade when my math teacher made a comment as he's asking me to come up to the board to do a math story problem. And he asks me if I took my dum-dum pills that day. And, and because he saw me as this kid that had this great self-image, I was well-liked and that would be funny and I would laugh, and I did. But what he didn't know is that inside, I already felt stupid. I didn't know the answer to the story problem. But
because we don't do that.
He saw me as just fun and, this will be funny. And then that led to, my way of balancing a checkbook, in my late teens, early 20s was to close one account, start another one, and just rotate that same philosophy to where my husband, that was his strength. That was my weakness. And so just therefore I gave over my power of just thinking, if I don't know how to balance a checkbook, then I must be stupid.
Yeah.
And all these other things. So when it came to building a business or even thinking about a business, I constantly was giving over the power to the other person who understood the computer or the numbers.
If that's the only way to be. But this is what we do, right? We think, what's wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me. Everybody listening has had that experience of whether it's a checkbook or, Brian used to do that all the time. Why can't you do this? Or, my mom, why can't you be like this? And then you question yourself until I think we get into our later years in life if we realize that this is just my brilliance. Instead of living in the shoulds and the backseat and the questioning of stepping into being unapologetically who we are and realizing you have tremendous, unbelievable, ridiculous strengths. And as you have stepped into those in your marriage, in your business, in your friendships, everything has exploded for you.
100%. The day you told me that, Lisa, you can hire that out, all those things you don't like and has been your story of what you're not good at, you can hire all of that out.
Yep. And
I was like, oh my gosh, hiring a bookkeeper, hiring
hiring a VA, hiring someone to do the social media, hiring somebody to do all those detail-y things so that you can just be in your brilliance. Which your brilliance is your work. It's connecting with human beings. It's seeing patterns. It's helping women. It's inspiring them, empowering them. That's your strength. But when we try to do both things, we just can't. We can't be everything. And this goes, now we're kind of dipping into the business stuff, but this is in business, in life, and our relationships, of coming into a relationship, coming into our business and just saying, this is what I suck at, and this is unapologetically who I am. You can accept it or not. I'll never forget with Brian, just fighting him, like saying, I am not great at paying these bills. Why are you having me do this? Like, you're awesome at this. Can you not just do this? And what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this? Coming home at the end of the day, and the first question he would ask is, did you do this thing today? No, asshole, I didn't. Because I don't want to. I suck at it. It stresses me out. And so learning how to show up in a relationship, say these things. Here's who I am. And then can you love me for who I am. And Mike has learned, I mean, you just said it. He's loved that person in you all along. You were just suppressing it. How crazy is that? If you would have allowed your marriage to end being in your backseat versus showing up, being naked, saying, not literally, but figuratively, like, this is who I am. Yeah, that too. That's funny. Physically and literally and not literally. Just showing up and saying, this is who I am. Let me put myself back into my front seat. And then, can you love me or can you not? Like, can you love me for who I am? And then I think the last part of this is then learning how to speak your partner's language, because all three of these things have to exist. One, we have to show up and be unapologetically who we are. We have to figure out who that is. Number one, we have to put our own oxygen mask on first. Then we get to step into relationship or our business or our own life, whatever it is, and then say, can you, will you, and can you love me for who I am? I'm sorry, listeners, but I think it's 50-50. I'm not going to lie. I think it's 50-50. As a former couples therapist, I think it's 50-50. Sitting on this couch right now, we're a good representation of this. Mine could not. Yours did. Yours loved it. Yours was like, hell to the yes. Where's my Lisa? Welcome back, girl. Love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. Where have you been? Welcome back. Your clients love it. Your friends love it. I love it. You know, when you get in your back seat, I'm like, what the fuck happened to you? I'm divulging.
Where'd you go?
We were in Maui after the Front Seat Life event. Lisa and I went on a trip together. She came to Maui with me. And can I tell this?
Sure.
Oh my God. This one day just is totally in her head. I'm like, what is happening with her? She's totally in her back seat. It's what it must have been like to be married to you for 20 years. It was not my friend Lisa. So we sit down at happy hour and I just go, what the fuck is wrong with you? Where are you? You're in your back seat. Where's my friend? Because realistically, like, I was worried about you, but let's get real. I was actually kind of bummed or pissed or whatever, because you're doing me a disservice. Because as your friend in that moment, or your partner, if I'm Mike, but I'm also your friend, we're on vacation together. I'm like, where's my friend? I was kind of mad at you. Like, what happened to you? And so you just, it took you a second, because you've done your work and you're, super, into personal development. You knew what was up with you. And you're like, oh my God, this thing is happening to me. And it was around your clothes and how you were showing up. And that's a whole nother topic, but she learned this incredible lesson. And then we have this unbelievable heart-centered conversation. And that could have gone two ways. One is I could have just ignored it. So as your friend or as Mike, I could have just been like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm going to ignore this and we're going to sit here and she's going to be in her back seat and this is going to be awkward. But, that's not how I roll. So I basically was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Let's talk this out. And then we proceeded to have heart-centered, loving, crying, amazing conversation. And then we went and had this blissful, amazing, ridiculous day because you were back in your front seat.
Yeah, it's so true, because so the deal is I'm showing up to Hawaii with all of my Seattle clothes, and Jessica's all in the Hawaii thing. And I was just like, I just felt weird, because I was just like, and I didn't know how to articulate, like, here's what I really felt like is I'm not comfortable, but I couldn't understand why. And it was something as small as, I just felt out of place. And I didn't know how to get the words together to say that. I was still like inward. I was in my head, like, why am I not feeling right? What's happening?
And this is the power of, I think this is a good example of the power of, one, understanding yourself, but sometimes we don't know. I do this all the time still. Sometimes I don't know what's up with me, but it takes someone in my life to call it out. So this is the power of good relationships and understanding who we are and making the effort to understand our partner. So in this example, I knew you were not yourself. I knew you were in your back seat. So you didn't know it. Maybe you knew you were in it, but you didn't know why. So as a good partner, a lover in a relationship, or a friend or a sister or whoever it is, sitting down and lovingly, that's my lovingly way of saying, what the fuck is wrong with you? That's my loving version of sitting down and saying, friend, what's up with you? What's wrong with you? Because again, that's that infinity symbol of like being in relationship. It's me knowing enough, loving you enough, knowing that you can trust me enough to have that conversation. But that is the beauty of a great marriage with you and Mike, and a good friendship of us being able to sit down and just go, what is up with you?
100%. And I think in our marriage, the thing was like, okay, take that example. Remember that awkward, just pregnant pause, right? Of just like when we weren't connecting in Hawaii for that, on that afternoon. That is literally what would happen in our marriage, but that feeling would go on for weeks at a time.
Everyone listening, I'm cringing. My face is cringing.
Weeks at a time. And we would avoid each other. You know, like when you're crossing each other, you're going from the bathroom to the bedroom. It was like this thick atmosphere of we just wouldn't connect. And it wasn't until an event happened that was emotional that we would lose our shit. You know, we would cry about it or something. And then I would bring up something that happened a month ago. And then, so it was this, we wasted years not being able to communicate. Today, we use the language. It feels like you're in your backseat. You know,
can I help you? What can I do? Instead of pathologizing each other or avoiding each other, it's just lovingly sitting down. This example in Hawaii, or you and Mike, or him coming to you on the floor while you're folding socks. It's all this example of turning towards, leaning in, but it takes us being unapologetically who we are. And then the last thing that, you know, I got derailed as I always do. The last thing is learning how to speak your partner's language. So again, being unapologetically who you are, loving me for who I am. But then the last part of this is then learning how to speak your partner's language. So me knowing that about you, or you knowing this about Mike and saying, baby, like, what's up with you? How can I help? What's going on with you? Or, you know, my more crass version of what the fuck is wrong with you? What's going on? That is learning about your partner. This is learning to speak your partner's language. This is why I'm doing this online course. This is why I'm doing this podcast. That's why I'm doing all of this, is that this is the strength of understanding who we are, but then also caring enough about the people in our lives and understanding personality type and how it shows up and how it puts them in their backseat, and knowing when they're at their best and knowing when they're getting triggered and knowing all of these things, and then making a choice to step in.
Totally. And that's a word we use often too, is I'm feeling triggered.
Yes.
This is probably a story. You know, may I share this with you? You know, are you open to hearing, and then being able to step into the conversation, knowing each other's love language, you know, knowing how to do that has really totally helped. Are you referring to, when you say love language, are you referring to the actual love languages?
Did I say that? I got on a roll. I think I meant to say your personality type, but I probably said love languages. But both of them are fantastic tools. Gotcha. I mean, they're, you know, one of the tools is the one that I use, that I created, this back seat, front seat. And then the other one that we're referring to for listeners is Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages. And both of these tools take two couples that are in a fairly loving, committed relationship. So when I was a couples therapist, I would never start with, hey, let me show you how to love your partner. Because basically laying out personality type, showing them the front seat, showing them the back seat, and then showing them the love languages. And this is how you can love and appreciate your partner. But oftentimes when there's so much resentment built up, or hurt or anger or whatever, years of turning away from each other, like you and Mike did, you can't start there. It's a good education point, but it takes two couples that are in a pretty good place. So this online course that I'm about to launch, I'm very clear that this is not for people that are like in highly conflictual, resentful kinds of places. Like you need to go get some like one-on-one therapy, but this is really for like where you and Mike were, is like, we love each other. We're committed. How can we learn about each other so that we can build a much, much stronger bond? And that's exactly what happened with you guys. I mean, I will never forget asking you, like, how committed are you? I mean, and Mike was like, I'm 100% committed to figuring this out. And you I challenged you to stick with it for 90 days, which you lovingly pushed back on me and gave me my own advice last night of being fully in for 90 days. And what does that look like and feel like to be fully committed, to go to therapy or take a Gottman class or take my online course or learn something so that you can step in for those 90 days and to be fully committed so that when you need to make a decision, you felt like you've got all the resources that you need.
And that's really interesting because Mike was committed when you had given us that challenge. Mike was committed for the end result of being together and doing whatever it took. I was committed to the process, whatever the outcome then would be based on the process. So even the commitment, we had different visions of the potential for the outcome. But the thing is that we both committed to a process, right? And at first, even Mike was like, okay, I'm not ready to enter into this because you have a different outcome, at the end. And I was like, actually, not really.
But I also can't promise you that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I can promise to being 100% in and fully committed for 90 days, but I can't promise the end result. Which I don't think any of us can, to be perfectly honest. I mean, that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, but committed to the process.
Yes.
So understanding our type was number one. Understanding how to communicate, number two. Recognizing, that each of us have different, coming from a place of different values, but yet very congruent.
Yes.
And then recognizing we have a different background, different history in terms of our family of origin and what all of that brings. But in the end, it was being committed to the process with new knowledge and a new way to look at one another for our strengths and also what makes us go crazy and enter into the back seat. And then what are those tools to help bring that person back and then to love that person for who they are.
And learning how to speak each other's language.
Yeah.
It's changed your whole marriage. I mean, it's amazing to have been a witness to it. And knowing how much simply understanding your personality type has affected you and Mike, your marriage, and then your 3 beautiful children.
And to be able to tell the truth.
Yeah. Oh,
to be able to use those tools to tell the truth, to face the hard and difficult conversations, the conflict. We all have conflict.
But not suppressing it, because that's what you did for so long. And so many people listening, I even still do it because it's uncomfortable, right? It's fucking uncomfortable to step in and tell the truth. But again, as I said, probably halfway through this episode, is that I have found that it is so much more painful to not show up and speak your truth and be unapologetically who you are. It's more painful to suppress yourself than it is to show up and be who you are.
100%.
Okay, friend, you need to go to work. We've been at this exactly an hour. What do you want to say in closing?
Wow. Well, first of all, I just want to express to you how grateful I am for you.
Yeah.
And your raw, real friendship and truth telling, because you were my rock. You were my last knot on the rope before I gave up. And you helped me to understand myself. You gave me incredible tools. You gave me tools to be able to share with Mike. He then took hold of those same tools. And today, each of our children possess and have taken on those tools. Our family has never been stronger because of your willingness to be you and to live your life's work. And I'm just so grateful that everything came together the time that you reached out and invited me, to come into the Front Seat Life.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess gratefulness is what's on my mind. And for any of the listeners who are going through such conflict or challenge or feel like you're at the end of your rope, is that understanding who you are in the midst of where you're going. But it's how are you going to get there? What are those next steps and tools? And that to press into what, Jessica, what you have here, it's brilliant. And it's life-changing. So
Thank you.
That's what's on my mind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love you. Thank you for doing this. All right, listeners. Would love to hear your comments over on the iTunes rating app. I think that's how I kind of best hear about it. So grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. Love you.
Love you too. From the bottom of my heart, truly, thank you so much for listening. I know that you have a ton of options, and the fact that you are taking time to listen to the Front Seat Life podcast means absolutely everything to me. If you're interested in learning more about the Front Seat Life way of life in the community, there's a couple ways that you can do that. First is always starting with your personality assessment tool. It's available on my website at jessicabutts.com. It's totally free, and it will help you figure out your personality type so you'll have some idea of what we're talking about. Next is, if you're interested in hiring me for a keynote or some coaching or strategy days or the fabulous and amazing Front Seat Life community, you can find out all about all of that at jessicabutts.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.